International football is back, and with that comes arguably the most exciting World Cup qualifiers. That's right, CONMEBOL World Cup Qualifiers kick off tonight in South America. The grit and the grind, we love it. And to talk about all the World Cup qualifiers with me is Roberto Rojas of DAZN. Thank you so much for being here and wearing your Paraguayan jersey.
Hey guys, hey, good morning. And yeah, here we are. It's another World Cup qualifying process. It's hard to believe that we just came back from seeing Argentina win it in Qatar, and now a couple months later, we're back into the swing of things, and this time in a much harder scenario.
Yeah, so let's talk about it really quickly. Just it's changed, right? Because the World Cup is obviously bringing in more teams, which means for CONMEBOL, potentially 7 out of the 10 nations are going to make it to the World Cup. So we were just talking off air, but you said you were feeling a bit more optimistic about everything now.
Yeah, I think we'll get to Paraguay in a bit, the team that I support, but I think in general for a lot of these countries, they feel as if though now with this kind of obligation to make the World Cup because I think, you look at the quality that the continent has been able to produce for so many World Cups over the last, 10, 20 years, it feels like a bit of a shame that some of those opportunities haven't been given to them because they probably missed out finishing in fifth or in sixth. Coming out of a really tough qualifying process for now with these increased spots for an expanded World Cup, it allows some of these countries to have a bit more pressure in them, but also feel like the obligation of saying we can actually make it this time. And I think it's going to be a very interesting case to see how all these teams will fare because I think all of the teams really have a chance now, especially with this expanded World Cup. But I would feel very disappointed and very nervous if you have to be in those final spots and you're just missing out on even a playoff spot to not make it to the World Cup in North America.
Yeah, no kidding. Before we jump into these first games, I just want to ask you about qualifying for the World Cup in South America specifically, because I don't think some people realize just how much it means to these teams. And my coworkers and I were talking about just how good South American qualifiers are. They are arguably the best. They're so exciting. And the way they play, I mean, first of all the political background with so many of these teams, there's a rivalry pretty much between every nation. But then also being pulled to these stadiums like the Maracana or Monumental, or you have to get, pulled to La Paz all the way up with that altitude there. South American qualifying is so special.
It is really special, but also it makes it so unique because of the fact that every country out there, no matter how strong or how weak they are, they always have something to their advantage. They always have something that allows them to give them, that kind of push, like you said, if it could be Bolivia with having to play in altitude or in Colombia where it's always notoriously hot during those matches. Obviously, Brazil and Argentina, you have their crowds. Brazil's record in World Cup qualifiers, the fact that they've never lost, obviously Argentina coming back from winning the World Cup, and I can go on and on. There's so much to there because I feel like for these players, they understand that, they want to make their dreams come true and their dreams to play in a World Cup, to play for their national team, it's something that is symbolic. And like you said, yeah, there's also those rivalries as well, for them beating that team or on the day of the game, it means so much. And it could be bragging rights. It could be something that goes into that culture. And relatively speaking, it's something that, you're going to be on the receiving end. It's something that you don't want to be in, especially now in this kind of age of social media and mass media as well. It feels like you're even more exposed to it now. So no, it is really special. And, hopefully now with Argentina winning this World Cup, it allows people to now give an eye of what's going on in South America and to really show how difficult it is to qualify for a World Cup.
Yeah, I hope so. So, okay, let's jump right in. Match day 1, the World Cup qualifying campaigns are kicking off. And tonight it starts with Paraguay and Peru in Ciudad del Este in Paraguay. This is your team, so I'm just going to let you go off here because I want you to give a little bit of a background with Paraguay because I feel like they're one of the nations in South America that maybe don't get as much love or people just don't know as much about them besides, the Enciso or the Almirons. But tell me what you're expecting with this opening match for Paraguay, especially being in Paraguay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is the one that kicks it off right here. And I think for myself personally, it feels like we need to get on the right step. And I think, playing against a Peru team that, of course, is now with under a new manager, with Juan Reynoso, I think this has also been something that for us, we need to go and pick up all the maximum points necessary, especially given the fact that Paraguay had been to so many World Cups, and they kind of utilized that in their qualification by winning at home. Now they've kind of fell off from that, missing the last three, having a really poor home record. Actually, I think even at one point qualifying for a World Cup, they had a better away record than at home. So now the journey for Guillermo Barros and this entire team is for them to pick up that pace, that and that kind of mystique that gave people, that kind of hope of making it to World Cup. Even so, to bigger extremes of having to even move stadiums. They used to always play in Asunción in their main stadium, the Defensores del Chaco. Now they're playing in Ciudad del Este, which is about 5-6 hours east of the country, to allow a bit more of a different atmosphere. Maybe it's for a jinx, I don't know, but this is obviously something that is going to be under huge pressure for Paraguay and for Guillermo Barros, because they understand that now with this kind of expanded World Cup, the margin of error is just going to be even as bigger as is possible. So I think for them to pick up points here against a Peru side where, historically they've always had good records against them at home. I think they lost one game in the last 7 that they played against each other in a World Cup qualifier, but Peru have always had the upper hand, especially under Ricardo Gareca. I think they went 10 years without losing to them in all type of matches. So they need to understand that for them, not only is that kind of like beating that hump of trying to beat Peru for the first time in so many years, but also the fact that they understand that to win this first game is so important, especially with the harder games coming up in this kind of process. And the same goes for Peru. I mean, they understand that after missing a World Cup in, kind of unfortunate fashion to Australia in that intercontinental playoff, they understand that now with this kind of golden generation that made it to Russia, with some of the key pieces that are coming up as well, it shows that for them, they are trying to aspire and getting points against direct rivals where they will probably fight those final spots to qualify is hugely important for them, especially away from home.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that we will see a Paraguay that we saw maybe from the 2010 World Cup potentially? That was the best Paraguay team I've ever seen. I think it's the best team that they've ever produced, making it to the quarterfinals of that World Cup. What a run. But do you think that this is potentially a new birth for your team?
Well, we have to wait and see. Like I said, I don't like to be optimistic or pessimistic as well. I like to find that middle ground. But no, I think we have a lot of exciting new players. Like you had mentioned, Miguel Miron, someone that's kind of really found his feet, his way at Newcastle United already. He was playing in the Champions League. He had all those goals last season. It's unfortunate that we're not going to have Julio Enciso, who had a fantastic second half of last season with Brighton, made it to the Europa League, had a good start before his meniscus injury. So he's going to be a big loss for us. But yeah, I mean, I think this is it. Like, this is it for this kind of like generation of players. And I can go on with other players like Gustavo Gomez of Palmeiras, many other players like Ramon Sosa, who's playing over there in Argentina, many others that are also coming up as well. For us and this kind of generation of players, this is their chance to show up. Relatively speaking, from results-wise, it hasn't been the best of starts. We haven't seen the best Paraguay, and I think this is kind of the match, that would hopefully allow people to feel a bit more optimistic, because they've been on this kind of negative streak ever since Guillermo Barros came in. They were already out of the World Cup. They haven't really impressed in friendly. So from a critical standpoint, I don't think we're going to see the best Paraguay as of yet, but hopefully a win today and in a convincing way, because I think ultimately to pick up points is always important, especially in these type of matches. But I think for Paraguayan fans who understand this kind of obligation of wanting to make the World Cup and to understand that rivals are going to get much more tougher, so it's better to really showcase your identity and the way that you play early on. I think, getting maximum points today and also impressing in the way that they play is going to be hugely important, not just for the coaching staff and the players, but also for the fans and people that follow this team to really get on them, because it's been so long since many fans of Paraguay have been trying to really follow this team, especially since, like you said, it's been 13 years since they made it to that World Cup quarterfinal and had their best ever team.
Yeah. Well, speaking of potential rebirths here, let's talk about Colombia. They are playing Venezuela in Barranquilla. New coach Nestor Lorenzo. They're on a 6-game unbeaten run, and granted, those have been mostly friendlies, but we also have seen a Colombia that has dipped since the Colombia we knew with, when James Rodriguez was just coming into that team. Falcao was still the captain. And then all of a sudden, they just weren't what they were. So now, new World Cup qualifying matches taking on Venezuela. Is Colombia back?
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think, look, it's always a case for a lot of these countries that have to. It's always difficult if you're not a Brazil or an Argentina who have always been fortunate enough to produce world class talents, no matter what kind of age or generation you're in. For Colombia, in this case, yeah, we've been fortunate enough to see a team that was blessed with a lot of talent, like you said, with players like James Rodriguez, Falcao. I can go on with like Juan Cuadrado and many others. And now, they're kind of really going into this kind of renovation era, like you said, with many players now coming up, like Luis Diaz at Liverpool and many others that are trying to recapture that kind of identity under Lester Lorenzo. I think ultimately not making it to Qatar was kind of an alarm bell, really, for them to say that, okay, yeah, we need to change. We need to look at some of the players that are coming up. We need to really start and try to revamp ourselves to be amongst South America's elite, because they've always kind of demonstrated that they can indeed compete on all ends, and it doesn't matter if it's a Copa America, a World Cup, or a qualifier. Like, they've always been kind of this kind of entertaining side, and I think that's for them something that they need to recapture. And if you go back in the last qualifying process, I think they went like 6-7 games without scoring a goal. I mean, for a Colombia side that's always been blessed with attacking players, that's unheard of. Like, that's something that should not happen this time now. So are they back? I mean, yeah, this is a good first test against a Venezuela side who, are under that pressure of never qualifying for a World Cup. They're the only South American country to have never done it. And for now, with this kind of expanded World Cup, it opens the door. So hopefully that Colombia can impress from the get-go playing at home. So I think that personally they're back, but it's going to take a lot more convincing from fans to see the best Colombia side out there.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an interesting one because I think both of these two teams are going to be fighting to make a spot in World Cup qualifying. So we will see, but let's get into maybe the biggest match of match day one, which is Argentina and Ecuador. And this one just has so many storylines naturally. Of course, it's at the Monumental. It's in Buenos Aires. Messi is back. The champions are back. Naturally, after everything he's done since joining Inter Miami, it's a circus, right? But then you have Ecuador, on the other hand, who have these, players that have really come into form with Moises Caicedo and Estupiñán. Not to mention that they're -3 points because of everything that happened last year with Bayern Castillo. So this match to me is just blockbuster when you think about like quality football.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you really have the match of the match day. Really, you have an Argentina side who have been on this high ever since winning it in Qatar, and now kind of it feels as if though for them they're still really going on to that, and they're still in this kind of party celebration, and it shows even the way that they've been playing. Even under Lionel Scaloni, that okay, yeah, they've had a few blips in the system during this kind of like way that they've been playing, but they've been unstoppable. Really, they've been playing so well, and obviously winning that World Cup is only going to motivate a lot of these players, and having Messi back, for someone that we didn't even know if he was going to even play in these type of matches today or even further back. So yeah, this is going to be a really big, test for Ecuador, like you said, who are on -3 points, because of the whole Bayern Castillo situation. And again, they're also a team that are trying to go back on that kind of wave ever since making it to Qatar, with a lot of talented players like Moises Caicedo, like Pierre Estupiñán, like many others out there that can really go and impress under Felix Sanchez. So I think, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting case. I mean, what a result it would be for Ecuador to pick up points, especially considering the way that they've been dealing with everything, from an administrative point of view. But I think for Argentina, now is the time for them to show if they can really, put off all that success and utilizing the same players under Lionel Scaloni for them to be successful and qualify with ease for the World Cup in North America, but also to prepare for other tournaments like the Copa America and, of course, the eventual World Cup that they will have to play.
I mean, are we also going to see a more informed Messi because he's not traveling from Barcelona or Paris going back to Buenos Aires? He's just flying south, and the time change is much more reasonable. I think it's only like an hour or so. So is it even more beneficial for the Albiceleste because, Messi is, let's say, not going to be as tired?
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw the best Messi doing all those trips and going to Argentina. We still saw him go off, so I wouldn't expect any of this to change, really. But I think what we will see is a Messi that is just much more relaxed or anything, because I think winning that World Cup took a lot off his shoulders, and now you see it even when he's playing in Inter Miami, where I had the fortune of seeing him play against the New York Red Bulls in person. I just saw a Messi that just looked like he was just having fun, like he was just playing
Yeah.
with his friends, not under that microscope. That, yeah, of course, he's always going to be so talented, and I think everyone's going to recognize that. But now, because he's kind of in the twilight of his career, and with many others, people can now look at him in saying that we need to go and enjoy this as much as we can. So no, I think it's going to be a very much enjoyable Messi. Hopefully that with Argentina, that they can be able to pick up that form with other players that have to step up. Because eventually, unfortunately for us fans, Messi's time with Argentina and with football is going to come up. So that leaves the door open for players like Julian Alvarez, Lautaro Martinez, Enzo Fernandez, and
Mhm.
Alexis McAllister, among many others, who have always been so blessed with so many talent. Now for them, this is kind of the opportunity for them to really step it up and to show that, hey, I think we could be fine without Messi. Like, we can go and manage what we can do and play these tough qualifiers, which even for them, it's been difficult to qualify over in previous cycles. So yeah, I think for them really is just more of an obligation, and for them, for Messi being there, it feels like, yeah, let's step it up now, because he's someone that we obviously look up to, and we've done what we can. Now let's try to continue that success moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's see. I think this one has Argentina written all over it, but the way Ecuador played in that World Cup, they really brought the grinta. So maybe, let's
Yeah.
see. But another big match is tomorrow in Uruguay and Chile. I am really looking forward to this one for a number of reasons as well. I mean, Chile have been, to be quite honest, miserable in the past few years after what was such a dominating run from them in the Copa America, qualifying for World Cups. I think the biggest issue here with Chile is they're still relying on so many of their elder players in Alexis Sanchez, Arturo Vidal, Gary Medel. I mean, they have some young talent too coming in, like Ben Berenton, but what does Chile need to do to kind of come back and be the Chile that, the entire nation of South America were terrified of?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the old are getting really old, and they're on their last legs, and the new haven't been doing anything, or at least have been showcasing it. So I think that's kind of the issue that Chile has been going on, and I think missing the World Cup in Russia really did a big harm for them, because obviously this was a team that just came off winning two Copa Americas. The fact that it kind of felt like the envy of all of South America, and for even the world, that they were the best teams in the world. They were one of the best teams in the world, but because of them missing it, they almost felt like, yeah, maybe it was just kind of a small thing. Like, we'll bounce back in Qatar. That didn't happen, of course. So now they're kind of stuck in this way of like, okay, where can we get our best players? Like you said, Beberenton Diaz, really the only one coming up, and maybe a few players here and there playing in Europe. But yeah, I'm fearful for this Chile side. I really am. Like, I don't think there is a team that is able to work properly. I think even with manager Eduardo Berizzo, who is managed in Chile before, he's someone that I think is not really demonstrated. And he's, I know this as someone that has seen him coach Paraguay. I don't think he's someone that is capable enough to manage a national team to its highest level. So I am fearful for them. I really am. I do see them as maybe the disappointment of this qualifying process. But that being said, you can never count out the experience of like Arturo Vidal, Alexis Sanchez, and Charles Aranguiz, among many others.
Mm.
So we'll have to wait and see. But I would feel very, very pressed for them to not make it to the World Cup. That's something that I feel confident in right now. But again, with this experience, you never know.
Arguably, maybe the team under the most pressure in terms of qualifying just because of what they've completed. But let's quickly talk about Uruguay. This match is in Montevideo, obviously. No Suarez, no Cavani, no Muslera. That being said, I mean, they still have, Darwin Nunez. They have Federico Valverde. Are we expecting a Uruguay win here?
100%, 100%. I think for them, like you said, with now this kind of new jump from your Suarez's, your Cavani's, your Godins, of course, who retired this year as well. Now comes in these kind of players who are getting into their prime, like your Darwin Nunez's, like your Federico Valverde's, and I think with someone like Marcelo Bielsa, who's someone that has always
Mm-hmm.
demonstrated that he could provide the best out of so little, and you kind of see that in his track record of what he was able to do. Even when he was playing against Chile, a team that he's seen grow, really. He was kind of the mastermind of how Chile were able to be so successful. Yeah, he didn't win anything eventually, but he was the one that kind of made the the building pieces for them to be successful. So he's obviously going to be familiar. He's taking on an ex assistant of his as well, who worked with him in Medellin. So obviously this guy knows that he has the upper hand. But yeah, I think ultimately for them playing at home, Uruguay have always been strong playing at the Centenario. So I think for them, in the way that they play, I should see Uruguay really in convincing fashion win this one. And I think that they're going to be someone that could surprise many others, maybe a Brazil or an Argentina when they do have to face each other, because I think Bielsa understands what it's like managing a South American team. And I think he can do something with, little and really kind of be hopefully a force in the continent and much stronger than they already are right now.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, especially with Uruguay and how they nearly qualified out of their group in the World Cup in Qatar. So we know the talent is there. Finally, let's just jump into Brazil and Bolivia. This match, I think, is only going one way, but I think Brazil still have a lot to prove because, at least from my perspective, they were one of the favorites going into the 2022 World Cup. And the way they crashed out with the talent that this country produces, I think they also have a lot to prove here because I think it was very unexpected. I think a lot of us had Brazil really making a run in the World Cup that just passed. So we also know there's been a few changes in the squad, obviously, with Gabi Jesus coming in and Rafinha due to, the Anthony issue and injuries. But this one, to me, easy Brazil win. Am I overseeing a little bit of Bolivia here?
I mean, I'll go on Bolivia first because they're the quickest one to talk about. They have a really horrible away record, and Brazil have never lost a home qualifier. So, yeah, I think it's going to go one way. So, yeah, but going into Brazil, it really is that. It really is now in this kind of, pressures on them. If they do make it to the World Cup, it's going to be 24 years since they last won the last World Cup, which is in 2002, which is incredible considering the fact that they've produced so many world-class players over the last 2 decades, and they haven't been able to win anything on the world stage, especially being the most successful. So I think that really is it. This is for them to really put themselves back into where they are, and for them, they should see qualifying as an easy thing. Again, it's going to be difficult for any team, but for them with their talent that they have, they still have Neymar. We have to see what kind of Neymar we get now, especially ever since moving from Saudi Arabia. We have to also see who the manager will be, because all the talk has been about Carlo Ancelotti coming in. We haven't had any official confirmation of it yet, so we have to wait if that's going to change something, because of course this is a Brazil side that always views Brazilian coaches, and in comes a foreign coach that, for them, there is a bit of division between them and using foreign coaches. That's kind of been something that maybe for them is a bit taboo because of the fact that they've used the laureates of their success to become successful. And they're like, okay, we can produce all these great players and we can produce these great coaches as well. So we have to wait and see. But yeah, I think for this game in particular, I think it's a straightforward Brazil win. But for them, it's now time for them to really jump into them understanding, and especially with Argentina winning this last World Cup, they understand that they cannot try to fall back from that and to go back into the success to then go into the World Cup.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I cannot wait to get these matches underway. But really quickly, I'm going to ask you, Roberto, a little bit of pressure here and a way too early prediction. Who are your 6 teams that are going to be going through in CONMEBOL? I'm going to say 6 because the 7th we're unsure. So a way too early prediction, if you will.
Very early. Oh, man. I was thinking about doing this today, actually, so I might as well. And I've been talking to my friends about it, too. But, yeah, I feel convinced about this one. So I think I'm going to start out in first. I think, I'm even going to go really bold on this one. I think we're going to see Brazil lose their first home World Cup qualifier. I think they're going to lose it to Argentina over there in Brazil when they do play each other, which would allow then Argentina to go in first in their standings. I see Brazil finishing second. I think I'm going to go with Uruguay third. I really like this Bielsa side. I think they're going to look very, very good. Like you said, with Colombia, they're going to be back, and they're going to be back at the World Cup, so I have them in fourth. And then the last 2, these are the hardest ones to pick because it feels like it can go either way. But I think even with this kind of -3 and whatnot, they're going to find their form again, and it's going to be Ecuador. And you know what?
You're wearing
I
the
would
jersey.
feel I mean, this has to be. I would feel very much not pressed for it, but even thinking at it from a logical standpoint, I do see Paraguay finishing 6th. I do see them making it to the World Cup. I just feel like they're going to find the right form. I think the talent that they have are better than the other nations that I haven't mentioned. And I think, yeah, why not? I say Paraguay are going to the World Cup for the first time in 12 years. I think they're going to go back to the United States, to Mexico, Canada, and yeah, get to see them in person, hopefully, in 2026. So Paraguay finishing sixth to go to finish off the World Cup spots.
All right. Well, in 2 years, I will come back to you and we'll look back at this and see how right or how wrong you are, because we have a lot of time. But thank you so much for being here and talking with me about all the South American football that we have ahead. First, match day 1 World Cup qualifiers of CONMEBOL kick off tonight with Peru and Paraguay.
Room 442 is brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.